I'm Matt. If you're a synthesizer player or a musician, you've probably got a story about how you got involved with your first instrument. And I've got 4 fantastic YouTube creators today who are going to share their stories of their first experiences with a synthesizer. This is a series that I'm trying to start on my channel. I shouldn't say trying to start. This is the 3rd installment, so I would say it's up and running. But this is the 3rd installment of the First Synth series. And if you haven't had a chance to watch the other 2, there'll be a link in the description below where you can check those out. I recommend that you do so. I'm just amazed at all the great stories that I've been able to hear through the course of this series. And the next installment is already well underway, so there'll be at least a 4th episode coming up. And again, I hope you can just take a few extra minutes here to grab yourself a cup of coffee, a snack, and listen to these 4 stories from my guests today, who are Floyd Steinberg, Knobs and Switches, followed by Green Leader, and then Discipline Commotion. Again, they all have great stories, and I hope that you're going to enjoy listening to them, and I'll see you again at the end.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm running a small YouTube channel called Floyd Steinberg, where I talk about DIY synths and other electronic musical instruments. Thanks to Matthew for having me on his show. So yeah, my first synthesizer, that must have been in 1989, and back then I had an Atari 520 ST, and I noticed that machine had MIDI ports on its back, but I never thought much about it. So back then I didn't have a lot of pocket money, and I grew up in a small northern village, and in order to alleviate that, my sister and me often spent our weekends in the next big city on flea markets, selling home decoration my mother used to make as a hobby. And then we could keep our share of that money and spend it on things we liked. And what I did then was I went to the next railway station where they had a bookstore, and in that bookstore you could buy British computer magazines, which I liked a lot because of their distinct British humor. I think it was called ST Format. And one day, on the cover of the magazine, they had a free edition of a sequencer called Concerto. And of course, they had a feature on how to use this program and what MIDI is and what keyboards and synthesizers are. And so my interest was raised. And back then, there were the 3 major players, Korg, Roland and Yamaha, and they had their famous workstations of the 80s out by then. And of course, those were totally out of reach for my budget. So what I did was I saved up some money, and then I went to the department store, and back then every department store had a music instrument section for whatever reason. And then I saw they had a collection of small and cheap keyboards, and of course I didn't know anything about synthesizers back then. And this one was made by Yamaha, and it was around $100 back then, if I remember correctly. And the model name was PSS 480. All I knew back then was this wasn't by no means a professional keyboard, and other than that I had no idea what I had there. So I took it home, and I tested the drums, and I thought they were good sounding. I think those were PCM sample drums. And I wasn't so fond of the synthesized instruments. I didn't know what FM was back then. But what I found is there were some buttons on it that weren't used for selecting patches, but for editing sounds. Of course, as a 15-year-old boy, I didn't read the manual, I just tried things. Then I discovered I could create some kind of a brass sound like in Van Halen's Jump, and I got really excited. And I think you could store up to 5 patches on the keyboard, and yeah, that was my way into synthesizers. I only recently found out that the PSS 480 has become some kind of, nostalgia item for many people. And that's because what I got there was a 2-operator FM synth with the ability to create your own patches and store them, which was quite unheard of in the price bracket at the time. And if I had known that back then and known about synthesizers and frequency modulation at all, yeah, maybe I would have kept it, but as it was, I sold it a year later and replaced it with a TG33, which funnily became another classic that is much sought after today. So sometimes I kick my ass that I didn't keep those instruments but sold them later for lesser known synths. When I look around now, I can see the PSS 480 is fetching really good prices on eBay, around $400, I think. So yeah, if you find one, perhaps give it a try. Could be better than you expected, especially given today's assortment of giant reverb pedals. So I could imagine you could get some great sounds out of that keyboard. Yeah, and that's my story. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Oh, and this is the only photograph I have of that setup.
Hello peeps, my name is Dirk Krause from Knobs and Switches. Matt asked me to tell something about my very first synthesizer. Thanks for having me, Matt. I will do. Everything starts with two mates. Victor, a bass player and huge fan of Frank Zappa, Pat Messini and Level 42. The other one is me, keyboard player and huge fan of Blancmange, Yazoo and the German band Spliff. We want to start a band, and for this Victor helped me to trade my very first keyboard, an Italian combo organ called CRB Elettronica Diamond 706, for a Yamaha CP30 electric piano. We had some sessions with a local drummer, and really quickly we recognized I need a synthesizer to make the music more special. We drove to the next bigger city. They had a music store with a second-hand corner where all the people bring their old stuff to buy new stuff in this shop. And at that day they had a Roland Uno 6 polyphonic synthesizer, and I really loved it. We tried it out and I thought, yes, this should be my very first synthesizer. I drove home and phoned my dad. My parents were divorced, and so my dad was not around, and I asked him if it's possible to borrow me the money because I'm still at high school. He agreed and he transferred the money. But at that time, no internet, no online banking, so of course it takes 1 week. I picked the money up, Victor and we drove to the shop, and guess what? The Uno 6 was sold. I was totally disappointed and frustrated, but Victor said, hey, you have now the money and let's have a look in magazines or a newspaper. Maybe we found another Uno 6. Yeah, and that was happened. I searched in the actual issue of Fachblatt Musikmagazin. That was the only magazine around at that time. And I found another offer for a Roland Uno 6 in a city 250 kilometers from me. Victor agreed that we drove to this guy. I bought it, and I was a very proud owner of my very first synthesizer, the Roland Uno 6. And at home, immediately I fell in love with the arpeggiator, and I was fascinated about it. One weekend I borrowed from a friend of Victor a Soundmaster Styx 305 drum computer, and I had my first demo recordings at home only with a cassette player. And I recognized my next love, connecting gear. I find out that the trigger out of the Soundmaster fits in the arpeggio clock in from the Uno 6, and miracle, the magic happened. It runs in sync, and I was on the hook. The Uno 6 was able to cover a lot of sounds, lush pads together with the chorus, spheric arpeggios, funky basses, organ-style sounds, and of course effects like high Q filter effects and whatnot. So the Juno 6 was for a long time really my main synthesizer. My mate and I read an advert from a drummer with an electronic kit, no Simmons, a female singer and a saxophone player who also plays keyboard, that they are looking for band members. We answered, we met, and since then we had our first band. My love to the arpeggios and sequenced style has two victims. One was of course the drummer, cause it was impossible to play to a free-running arpeggiator without a click or a drum track or something to keep the track. He left and he was replaced by a DR110 from Boss. And the other victim was my mate Victor, cause he didn't like to play bass to a drum computer and my overwhelming arpeggio sounds all the time. But luckily he only changed from bass to the mixing desk, and since then he was the front of house and still a member of the band. That was brilliant. At the end of the 80s I changed my musical style from pop to industrial. I start a new project where samplers become more important, and I decided to sell my Juno 6. Cause at that time I had also a Jupiter 8 and I thought the Jupiter 8 could cover all the necessary things that my Juno 6 does. It was a mistake, and of course I regret the sell. And in the mid-90s I bought back a Juno 60, which I used for a long time in many projects and recordings. But in 2016 I get bored of this Juno sound. It was the high time of Eurorack and modular stuff, and I'm looking for new sounds, and I traded my Juno 60 for a Dave Smith Pro 2 synthesizer. And of course I regret it. Not while the Pro 2 is a bad synthesizer, that's not. But after a while I miss my Juno 6 sound. So thanks for listening to my first synth story. I wish you now more fun with Matt. Thank you. Bye.
Everyone, Green Leader reporting, and today we're talking about my first synthesizer. And you know, it's hardly a synthesizer, but it's my first keyboard, so here it is. The Radio Shack Concert Mate 470. Now this looks like a toy because it pretty much is, but what I discovered were these synth sounds over here. Had like twinkle, echo, pluck, bells. I'd give you a sound demo, but I can't even get this thing to power up anymore. This was officially my first synthesizer, and once I found these synth sections I started to gravitate more and more towards those sounds. Fast forward a decade or so later, and my bro brought home this Bad Larry. I don't think it's truly analog, but it does have a lot of warm sounding pad sounds. And when I started to, start to edit the wave, the spectrum, the modulation, attack decay, that's when I really started to realize shaping synth sounds is what I'm going for. Now, let's just rewind a little bit. What gravitated me towards all these cool sounds? Love of sci-fi, love of old school video games and hearing synthesized sounds on the NES, Sega Genesis, which is basically a DX7. Sonic the Hedgehog, hearing all these proggy riffs, and before you know it, I was really falling in love with the synth. As a teenager, I really loved Dream Theater, and when I heard Jordan Rudess, and my favorite keyboardist ever, and he was shredding on his Korg Kronos. So I knew someday I'd have to get the Korg Kronos. But until then, one day in, what was it, 2015, 2014, I was walking through a Guitar Center, and then I stumbled across this beautiful, magnificent piece, the Jupiter Boutique. I'm walking by, I'm like, whoa, it's kind of cool. And when I saw all the features on here, being able to shape the sound however the heck you wanted, in a small little portable format, so much fun. So this is probably one of my first real synths. I know I'm late to the game here, but I'm making up for last time. If only I lived in the 80s or 90s. No, but the Roland Boutiques have been a great way to revisit the past, and the Jupiter 8 is one of those most iconic synths from the 80s. So you're getting all those warm string sounds. Let's see if I can find some. So yeah, fast forward to a day when I could actually get the Korg Kronos used off a customer for cheap. And I was searching through all of the presets, and I kept coming across this sound in a little graphic, and it had wavetables all over it. I'm like, what synthesizer is that? I love these sounds. Turns out it was the Korg DW8000, which I eventually got. So the workstation was a fun way for me to explore all different sounds, gravitate towards my favorites, and kind of pinpoint which synths do I really love and, do I really need. So yeah, the search for the perfect synth is no different than a guitar searching for its perfect tone, and sometimes it's lengthy and expensive, but as you go along, you flip old ones, you get new ones, and hopefully by the end of it all, you've found the synths that really resonate with you the most. And to me, the DW8000, the Juno 106, which is just the most lush pad machine ever with the chorus engaged, that is. It's one of my favorite sounds. And so, once I've got some of these iconic synths, I keep them in my studio forever. But for the, the novice getting into the game, I do recommend a workstation or maybe not a workstation because those are expensive, but some way to go through thousands of sounds. Maybe it's a plugin, but if you can kind of try out these synths first before committing to the full purchase, it's a lot better on your wallet, and you're not really going to know what vibes with you until you have it in your hands. So yeah, for someone who has too many keyboards, it's been a long journey, but the Prophet 6 and the OB6, again, staples in the studio, modern staples, reliable. And anyone getting into it, go for a JDXi. It's a mini Roland keyboard with a vocoder, drum machine, 4-part sequencer. You can really learn the basis of sound shaping and composing with that guy. If you want to go deeper, try the Korg Mini Log. It's an all analog, tons of knobs on the front, so you're going to be able to deep dive and sound edit and learn what each parameter does. So yeah guys, that's my story with my first synth. And again, what inspires me to go for these synth sounds? A love of sci-fi, a love of new age music from the 90s, hearing all these cool sparkly pads, even Enya using the D50, right? So I've got a soft spot for all these sort of, futuristic sound design. It's a way of exploring the cosmos, as Carl Sagan might say. No, but a lot of fun, guys, and synths are a lifelong journey. And so thanks for this opportunity, Matt, and all of you other YouTube folks out there. I appreciate the enthusiasm and the support, and it's always good to find fellow synth lovers out there. So yeah guys, that's my story. Any other questions, hit me up, and back to you, Matt.
Hey, up right, how are you all doing? Thanks to Matt for inviting me onto his channel. Yeah, my first synthesizer. Well, my first experience of a synthesizer was on my dad's family home organ. It was a Farfisa, I think, but it had a little panel on the left hand side that was like a synthesizer section, and it had a few coloured sliders on it, and I think it had attack and sustain release and filter whatnot. Anyway, yeah. So and I loved that. I thought, well, that's a great sound, that is. What age would I be? I'd be about 14, so to be about 1975. Yeah. Right, that was my first experience with a synthesizer. And my second experience of a synthesizer, I was on holiday and I walked into a music shop where they sell second-hand, pre-owned gear down in Great Yarmouth, and they were a Korg 700 and this looks amazing. So I asked chap if we could have a go, had a go on it. It's brilliant. This is what I want. This is what it's all about. But I couldn't afford it. I don't know how much it was back then. This was about probably 1978, perhaps. So I'd have been about 17. But anyway, I tried it out. Loved what all it can do. Korg 700. So I decided I probably could have, if I wanted to, got a bank loan, got it on pay monthly thing, but I didn't want to risk it in case I couldn't afford it. So move on to about 1981. I was started to play in bands at this time. All I had were a Vox Continental double manual organ, and I wanted something else to go with it, so I went down to a shop called Carlsberg, who make amps and cabs back in the day, and I went in, and I don't know if the Moog Prodigy had just come out, but they had a Moog Prodigy on display, with wooden end cheeks. I thought, wow, this is a Moog. This is a Moog, and my dream since has always, it's been a mini Moog, and I could never afford one of them. So I had a go on it, and it were amazing. 2 oscillators. You could do all filters, sweeps, and whatnot. You could, riff about on it dead easy. And I don't know how much it were. I've got a feeling in my head it was £250 or £350. And I could buy it, I could afford it if I got a loan. So, one of the silly things that impressed me was that I'd never, the release, I turned it up to full and pressed the note, and it seemed to go on for ages. That really impressed me. I don't know why. But yeah, press note, and it just went on forever. Anyway, just by the way, I went back to my own town, Chesterfield, and they had a loan. It weren't a bank, it were a loan shop. I don't know what you call them. You could go in and ask them, but it weren't just loan sharks or a criminal thing, It were a legitimate place. Anyway, I went in, I gave them my details and asked them, told them how much I wanted. And I expected for them to tell me to come back in a couple of days when they'd sorted everything out. Anyway, went into it, says, how do you want it? I says, I don't know, because I weren't expecting it, and they just giving me money there and then. So then I trooped back up to Sheffield. I went and bought this Moog Prodigy, and that was that. My first, stuck it on top of my Vox Continental, and that were it. Lovely. But then of course things move on, don't they? I probably had it 4 years perhaps, and then digital stints. No, polysynth started to become cheaper, and I traded it. I part exchanged it for a Juno 6, I think. Yeah, a Roland Juno 6. I traded it in, part exchanged it for that. That were it. Not got it, but I've seen him now, and I'd like one now, but they're £1,000. and I'm not going to pay that. You know, if I sold one for £200 or something, but I ain't got room anyway. I've only got a small space. You can't tell on here, but it's about I don't know. It's about that. It's about, well, I can't show you. I'd have to move camera around, but perhaps I'll save that for another time. I ain't got space for it anyway, so I don't think I'll bother. So anyway, I've got this Moog grandmother, so that does the job anyway. So I hope that you found that interesting, and thanks to Matt again for inviting me on, and I hope you could understand me accent. It's local Derbyshire. It's a bit broad, so anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thanks to my guests for contributing their stories. There were some fantastic things that I got to learn about these guys through the course of this process, and I really appreciate each of them contributing. Those are some fantastic stories that we got to hear today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you would be interested, and you have a YouTube channel, if you would be interested in participating in the next installment of this series or an upcoming installment, please feel free to get in touch through my page here. I'd love to talk with you and see if we can make a fit for you to join in. It'd be great to have you. So get in touch. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below. What did you think about these 4 stories today? And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.